For more than a century, Hollywood has sold the world carefully crafted illusions. Perfect romances, tragic endings, larger-than-life legends. But what if some of the greatest performances in entertainment history never happened on a movie screen or concert stage at all? What if they happened in real life, in the form of carefully orchestrated disappearances? Official death stories often sound neat and final. Heart attacks, overdoses, accidents, murders, case closed. Yet for millions of fans across generations, some of these explanations have never quite sat right. Too many inconsistencies, too many missing details, too many unanswered questions quietly buried along with the stars themselves. According to a former FBI agent who specialized in celebrity cases during the 1970s and 80s, several high-profile deaths contained anomalies that would never pass scrutiny in an ordinary investigation. When you've spent decades in law enforcement, he once said, you develop a sense for when something doesn't add up. Some of these cases had more holes than a bad movie script. Mysterious last-minute changes to travel plans, bodies cremated with unusual speed, death certificates signed under questionable circumstances, and in at least one case, a retired Las Vegas mortician later claimed he was paid tens of thousands of dollars to falsify death documentation for a major American icon. Why would anyone go to such lengths? The motivations vary. Crushing debt, threats from organized crime, dangerous political knowledge, or simply the desire to escape a life that fame had turned into a prison. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 10 legendary Hollywood figures whose deaths may not have been the end of their stories, but the beginning of their greatest disappearing acts. And we begin with the most famous case of all. 1. Elvis Presley, the King's greatest disappearing act. On August 16, 1977, the world received shocking news. Elvis Presley, the undisputed king of rock and roll, had been found unresponsive in his Graceland bathroom. He was just 42 years old. The official cause of death was a heart attack reportedly linked to prescription drug use. America mourned, millions grieved, and Elvis was laid to rest at his beloved Memphis estate. Or so the story goes. For decades, fans have pointed out that the circumstances surrounding Elvis's death were anything but ordinary. The most basic question is one that continues to haunt investigators. Who actually identified the body? Remarkably, Elvis was not identified by medical professionals. Instead, the responsibility fell to his father, Vernon Presley, who was heavily sedated and emotionally devastated at the time. No fingerprints were taken. No dental records were verified. In fact, the man who changed American music forever was identified with less formality than most people need to cash a check. Then there's the death certificate. Elvis's middle name was misspelled, Aaron instead of Aaron, the spelling Elvis used throughout his life. Fans have debated this detail for decades. Some dismiss it as a clerical error. Others believe it was a deliberate signal. And there's more. The day after Elvis's reported death, airport records show a man using the alias John Burroughs, a name Elvis had famously used for years, purchased a one-way ticket to Buenos Aires, Argentina. He paid in cash and left no forwarding information. Less than 24 hours after Elvis supposedly died, his known alias was used for international travel to a country popular at the time for Americans looking to disappear. Coincidence? Or something more? Adding fuel to the theory are claims that Elvis had been working as an unofficial consultant for the Drug Enforcement Administration, using his celebrity access to gather intelligence on drug trafficking within the entertainment industry. According to a retired DEA agent, this cooperation may have put Elvis in serious danger. There were people with organized crime connections who knew too much. The agent said, by 1977, the threats were very real. This has led to the long-standing witness protection theory, the idea that Elvis staged his death with federal assistance to escape credible threats. Supporters of the theory also point to Elvis's dramatic physical changes in his final years. The weight gain, the altered appearance, the growing facial hair. Some believe these were not signs of decline, but preparation. When you're that recognizable, the former FBI agent explained, you need more than a fake ID to disappear. You need to become someone else entirely. Sightings of Elvis have never stopped. From small towns to fast food restaurants, people continue to report encounters with men who look, sound, and behave uncannily like an older Elvis. Is he alive? No one knows for sure. But one thing is clear. The official story leaves far too many questions unanswered. 2. Andy Kaufman, the ultimate performance artist. When Andy Kaufman died of lung cancer in 1984 at just 35 years old, even his closest friends weren't entirely convinced it was real. That reaction made sense. Kaufman's entire career was built on deception, confusion, and blurring the line between reality and performance. He didn't just break the fourth wall, he erased it completely. Kaufman had openly discussed faking his own death for years, not as a joke, but as the ultimate performance art statement. According to friends, he even claimed that if he ever did it, he would return exactly 20 years later. He had plans. One close friend later said, "Not fantasies, plans." What made Kaufman's case even stranger was how secretive he was about his illness. Many people who worked with him had no idea he was sick until shortly before his death. That secrecy, some argue, would have made staging a disappearance far easier. Then came the 2013 Andy Kaufman Award ceremony, where a woman appeared claiming to be Kaufman's daughter, stating that Andy was alive and watching from home. While later revealed to be a hoax orchestrated by Kaufman's own brother, the incident reignited public fascination. Even decades later, Kaufman's death remained surrounded by doubt. And if that uncertainty was deliberate, it may have been his greatest performance of all. 3. Tupac Shakur, the rapper who knew too much. On September 13, 1996, Tupac Shakur died from gunshot wounds sustained in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. He was 25 years old. Or was he? Tupac's death raised immediate questions. He was cremated just one day after his passing, an unusually fast decision for such a high-profile murder case. No public viewing. No preserved evidence. In the months before his death, Tupac had spoken openly about needing an escape strategy. He had survived previous shootings, served prison time, and felt trapped by the violent persona attached to his fame. His final album was released under the name Machiavelli, a reference to philosopher Niccolò Machiavelli, who famously wrote about faking one's death to fool enemies. Coincidence? Maybe, but fans don't think so. Tupac also had a direct connection to Cuba through his aunt, Assata Shakur, who was granted political asylum there. A country with no extradition to the U.S. would have been a perfect refuge. Even decades later, Tupac's posthumous music output remains astonishing, with lyrics that some believe reference events after 1996. Whether he survived or not, Tupac left behind one of music's most enduring mysteries. 4. Marilyn Monroe, the starlet who knew too many secrets. Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her Brentwood home on August 5, 1962. The official cause, probable suicide by overdose. But Monroe's death has never been simple. She was romantically linked to both John and Robert Kennedy. She had access to sensitive political information, and she was increasingly unstable and outspoken. Some believe she wasn't murdered, but removed. According to one theory, Monroe was quietly extracted by intelligence agencies and placed into a controlled environment to prevent potential leaks of dangerous information. Supporting this are unexplained gaps in the timeline of her death, conflicting witness statements, and forensic inconsistencies regarding the position of her body. There were even reports of women in psychiatric facilities years later claiming to be the real Marilyn Monroe, some of whom knew deeply personal details that were not public knowledge at the time. Whether she died that night or disappeared into obscurity, Marilyn Monroe vanished from public life in 1962, and the truth has never fully emerged. 5. Jim Morrison, the Lizard King's Paris escape. Jim Morrison was allegedly found dead in a Paris bathtub in 1971. No autopsy was performed. Only one person ever saw the body, his girlfriend, Pamela Corson. Morrison had spoken openly about faking his death. He despised his rock god image and longed to be taken seriously as a poet. In the months before his death, he had altered his appearance dramatically and moved overseas. Even Morrison's father, a U.S. Navy admiral, later admitted he never saw official confirmation of his son's death. Sightings of Morrison have persisted for decades, particularly in the Pacific Northwest, where he was reportedly seen living quietly and writing poetry. If any rock star understood myth-making, it was Jim Morrison. 6. James Dean, the star who couldn't age. James Dean died in a car crash in 1955 at just 24 years old. Or did he? One theory suggests Dean survived, but was severely disfigured. Rather than destroy his pristine image, studio executives allegedly declared him dead while arranging for his care in private. Hollywood studios in the 1950s had enormous power, and image was everything. Nurses and medical staff later claimed to have treated a badly burned man who matched Dean's habits and mannerisms, visited discreetly by studio executives. Dean's perfect image, frozen in time, became far more valuable than any future career could have been. 7. Michael Jackson, the king of pop's final illusion. Michael Jackson died in 2009 from drug intoxication. His doctor was convicted. Case closed. Except it wasn't. Jackson was drowning in debt, under immense pressure, and deeply fascinated by illusion and disguise. Footage surfaced showing a figure resembling Jackson exiting the coroner's van. A mysterious appearance by burn victim Dave reignited speculation. Jackson spent his entire career questioning reality and performance. For some, a stage disappearance fits his life better than a tragic end. 8. Bruce Lee, the dragon who vanished. Bruce Lee died in 1973 from cerebral edema. He was 32, but Lee had powerful enemies in the Hong Kong film industry. He refused to cooperate with organized crime. His final film, Game of Death, literally featured a plot about faking one's death. His cremation was unusually fast. The medical explanation remains controversial. Sightings followed. If Lee disappeared, he did so at the peak of his power, ensuring his legend would never fade. 9. Kurt Cobain, the reluctant icon. Kurt Cobain's death in 1994 was ruled a suicide, but the note he left reads more like a resignation letter than a goodbye. The heroin levels in his system raised questions. Handwriting experts noted inconsistencies. Cobain had openly discussed disappearing and starting over. Whether he died or escaped, Cobain rejected fame in the most definitive way possible. 10. Paul Walker, the last stunt. Paul Walker died in a car crash in 2013. But Walker was deeply involved in humanitarian work and reportedly uncovered corruption during relief missions. Some believe he was given a chance to disappear and continue his work anonymously. Sightings place him in remote locations helping communities. True or not, the idea fits the man many believed. He was